introduce our first keynote speaker, Rosie Rogers from Greenpeace. Rosie has been campaigning for the last 3 years to put clean air at the top of the political agenda, and I'm delighted to welcome her here today.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really honoured to be here. But I'm actually more delighted about how many people are here today on a sunny day in Bath, and it's really just a testament to how much this issue is really important here. So thank you so much for being here. So before we start, I'm going to do a very quick exercise. I'm from Greenpeace, and we kind of do interactive things. I'm not going to make you go hug a tree or anything, but I would like you just to trust me for 10 seconds to do this. So if everyone can sit comfortably, and if everyone can please close their eyes. And I'd like everyone to take a big deep breath in, and a big deep breath out. And I'd like you to think for just 10-20 seconds about why you're here. I want you to look into your heart and see what you feel about this issue, and really hold on to that. Okay, open your eyes, please. Thanks for doing that with me. The reason why I did that is because I think today, will be a lot about stats, will be a lot about numbers, but really the air pollution crisis that we're facing is about feelings, because stats and numbers are really important, but they don't usually change hearts and minds. And I want to share with you first why I got into air pollution and one of the reasons why I really care about this issue. So this is Sefi, and this is the daughter of a friend of mine, and she is almost 3, and she has horrendous breathing problems. When air pollution is high in London, where she lives in East London, she can't go outside, she can't play, she is really, really ill, and the doctors have done loads of tests, and it's not through anything that they can diagnose that is genetic or is biological, and it is from air pollution. And that's why I'm here, that's why I care. I care because the future generations, I care because of my health, I have asthma myself, I care because of Sefi, I care because of the elderly people in my community who are really, really ill from air pollution. And I just wanted to kind of set the scene for today that, when we're talking about difficult things like how to solve this public health crisis and what to do, to really hold in your heart why you're here and the feelings around why you're here, because that's what's going to change hearts and minds in your community, in Bath, in public opinion formers, MPs, local councillors, etc. So I just wanted to set the scene with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the bigger picture of air pollution, and as has been said, it'd be great to have a really great discussion in the time that we have. So, yes, unfortunately, air pollution is a global health crisis. And I just wanted to kind of bring in the bigger picture that air pollution contributed to 6.5 million premature deaths in 2015. And that data is from The Lancet, which is a really respected journal. And everything that I have in these slides is all referenced. If you want to have any more references, just come and talk to me and I can email you any more information. So just wanted to set the scene that this is a problem not only in Bath, not only locally in Bristol and Cardiff and Birmingham and Manchester and London and Glasgow and Southampton and so many cities all over the UK, but this is a problem globally as well. And just to give a bit of perspective, here's a slide of the highest level of air pollution deaths globally. And as you can see, the UK isn't, the top of the charts, but the fact that we're on there at all is it's sad, and I think it's shocking. So I think that's kind of something just to keep in mind in terms of the bigger picture. So I'm going to talk a little bit about UK air pollution. So the UK government has been taken to court 4 times over illegal air by the amazing law firm and activist group Client Earth. They've also been taken to court by the EU, and the European Court of Justice have just launched a new claim to the UK government. So what we've seen is, we know air pollution is an issue, that's why you're all here. And what we've also seen on the other side is that the UK government are literally dragging their feet to do something about this. And yes, it's hard, But as we all know, it matters so much that it's absolutely unacceptable that they're having to be taken to the courts over and over again to solve something that is going to change people's lives. And it's not just the fact that they're being taken to court, but actually they're also lobbying in the EU to water down standards every single year. Greenpeace did an investigation a few years ago when Liz Truss was the Environment Minister, and we found that she was actively lobbying to water down the standards in Europe. And this is the kind of thing that we're facing in our national government. So just as a wider context, in terms of World Health Organization data, more than 40 towns and cities in the UK have exceeded or are at the exceeding levels of air pollution limits set by the WHO. There's a long, long list of towns and cities. I named a couple already. Bath is not in the top 40, but it is in the top 50. And Bristol, for example, is one of the worst air pollution hotspots in the country. And as we all know, air pollution has no borders. So the bad air that is in Bristol, is in Taunton, is locally all over the UK, doesn't just stay in that area. Obviously, with the weather patterns, it goes all over the UK. So just because Bath isn't the #1 worst city, it doesn't mean that it's not a problem. As kind of mentioned, the cost of the NHS is huge. So Public Health England did a report and they found that air pollution costs the NHS 42 million a year in terms of treatment. And that is, for me, absolutely staggering. And that's something that really, really has settled in my stomach as a kind of key wake-up call to how much of an issue this crisis is. So a little bit more of the downer stats, I'm afraid, but today is all about solutions, so it's going to get happier for sure. So the sad truth from DEFRA, poor air quality has been classified as the largest environmental risk to public health in the UK and was described by the WHO as a public health emergency. The total burden of outdoor air pollution has been estimated to equal 40,000 premature deaths each year. There's not really much I can say about that, but that is obviously a staggering number. And air pollution is the second largest cause of avoidable mortality after smoking. And I think this is something that's really interesting to me. So at Greenpeace we do, I'll tell you a little bit more about Greenpeace in a minute, but we do lots of different campaigns. We do things on ocean plastics, renewable energy, and it's interesting that it's something about, a puffin with a piece of plastic in their mouth really touches people's hearts. And, plastic pollution is a really important issue. And for some reason, the government have taken it upon themselves to use plastic pollution as one of their key drivers for change in the environment. But my question is, why is the air pollution crisis not seen the same way? And I don't really know the answer to that. I'd love to hear what you think about that as well, because it's something we've really struggled at Greenpeace. And I think one of the big things is because air pollution is invisible, and it does really rely heavily on statistics. And we know that stats are shocking, but as I said in the beginning, they don't really touch your heart. They kind of go in your mind and you think about it and then it kind of leaves, which is why it's really great to see initiatives, I think, from the Transition Network, which I'm sure will be explained later, about these kind of visualizations of air pollution. Also, I'm wearing my lanyard with pride because I think it's really important to tell the human story, to be able to show the effects of air pollution, but also to talk about it in a tangible way, because we've really struggled in how to show the problem of air pollution, because you can't do it simply in a photo or in a David Attenborough documentary, sadly. So that's something that is a really interesting conversation that I'd love to talk to you about and learn about as well. So, sorry about the awful operation style graphic here, but this is just a bit of an insight into how air pollution affects your body. It affects your lungs, it can affect fetuses, pancreas, heart, brain. I mean, we're here because we care, so I don't want to preach to the converted, but just to bring it home that this is a really, really serious issue. So then going on to main causes, so the principal air quality pollutant emissions from diesel, petrol, other alternative fuels are carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, unburnt hydrocarbons, and particulate matter. I know there's lots of big words that I get really confused about, to be honest, still, about what the differences are, but it is good to know what you're tackling and what you're trying to change. And for more information, if you just look up the Department for Transport, have done some really great and actually quite accessible guides into the causes of air pollution. But really the most immediate air quality challenge is tackling the problem of nitrogen dioxide, NOx. And these are the main particulates that are causing air pollution and causing people like Seffi to not be able to leave her house. And WHO classified diesel fumes as carcinogenic in 2012. So that's kind of the main cause of air pollution. We could talk for days about the different causes. There are lots of different things that cause air pollution, from particulate matters to lots of different pollutants, but the main one is really about NOx and about diesel, and that's why it's so key that we're talking about, yes, thank you, and that's why it's so key that we're talking about cars and talking about transport. Next, the thing I want to talk about, which is the exciting bit, is the solution side. Obviously that's why we're here, because we want to see active solutions around air pollution. And for Greenpeace and for myself, the main national solutions from the UK government that can be done is, one, a phase-out date. So a phase-out date on petrol and diesel cars. A phase-out date announcement on diesel and petrol cars is a huge kind of indicator for the car industry, for towns and cities, about moving away from diesel and petrol. And right now we have a 2040 phase-out date from the government, which I think is embarrassing. We need that date to be pushed forward to at least 2030 if the car industry, towns and cities are really going to take this seriously. So we're lobbying to change that date to 2030. Already we have places like Norway, Paris, China, Israel, Ireland, France, Spain, and I think Italy have all announced a phase-out date of 2030 or later. So if the government really want to be ahead of the game, they've got to change that phase-out date. Obviously, supporting local action is extremely important in tackling the air pollution crisis and funding a national clean air network. In terms of city solutions, you might have heard that Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, announced a ultra-low emission zone just yesterday, which is a campaign that Greenpeace has been working on for a year and a half. So we're really, really excited about that. It's the biggest ultra-low emission zone in the world, and it's from the north to south circular of London. And it's a really big campaign win, and hopefully lots of other towns and cities can learn from that. So that's excellent news for us. Big city solutions that really actually will change air pollution is these clean air zones, banning diesel, and better public transport and cycling, but I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about that today. Next, I've got something about personal solutions. So, for example, awareness raising. I work with my local Mums for Lungs group, which is a group in Brixton in London of mums who are campaigning on the streets every single weekend about the horrendous air pollution in Brixton. They do these amazing buggy blockades with their kids, and they kind of blockade the council when they're making important decisions, and they get in the road and kind of do small protests, and they're amazing. And I know that there's lots of those community action groups in Bath as well. Action in your local school and community. Are you a governor in your school? Can you do something about local action in your school and air pollution? Obviously, there's great leaflets on tables about idling and sharing information about that. Obviously, we're all, we're voters, we're citizens of this country and of this world. We have rights and we have a voice, so writing to your MP, your councillor. I'm sure many of you use that tactic a lot. And I'm sure you get that a lot. And one important thing that I think has been missing as well in the debate is calling on car companies to change, and that's what Greenpeace is doing a lot of, because these car companies can change their ways. They don't have to invest in dirty diesel technology. They can switch to electric, they can switch to hybrid, and I think we all have to do our part, but we also have to have an ask to the people who are contributing to this problem. It's also worth saying that I wanted to just kind of say there's so many people that are making air pollution push up the agenda and making it a massive issue. There's people like Climate Earth, who I mentioned, who are taking the government to court, people like Mums for Lungs and local community action groups, the British Lung Foundation, councillors, MPs, schools. There's this amazing group called Doctors Against Diesel, who are health professionals who are doing protests against diesel all over the country. So just want to quickly say what Greenpeace are doing in this fight for better air quality. Greenpeace used non-violent direct action to get issues onto the national agenda. And we did this action in London where we had some very brave people climb up Nelson's column and put a gas mask on him on one of the most polluted days in London to raise awareness, and we got loads of front page coverage. We've done a lot of protests and actions all over the UK and worked with lots of different coalition groups. If you want to know more about that, you're very welcome to talk to me anytime about it. We've also done a lot of investigations. We did an investigation that showed that thousands of British school children are having their schools on illegally polluted roads all over the country. So with 2 slides to go, you'll be happy to know, I just wanted to quickly bring it from the kind of global down to the local. Obviously, when we're thinking about action in Bath, just to remind you that air pollution has no borders. This is a global issue that we need to tackle together. And other cities are doing that. So we've seen actually yesterday in Milan, in Italy, the mayor announced a 2020 phase-out date of diesel and petrol. We've seen action in Rome, we've seen action in Valencia and Paris and Hamburg and lots of other European cities, and we've seen action in London, but we haven't really seen proper action in many other places in the UK, so I hope Bath will be leading that way. And obviously there's the Clean Air Zone consultation that will be talked about today, which is really, really, really important that everyone has a say in that, and I hope that everyone's going to be doing their part in the community to make sure that those numbers are really high and the engagement in that is massive. Obviously we'll be talking about better public transport, and as been mentioned, that Bath has to do something. And I guess this is the question, is what Bath does the bare minimum and doesn't really tackle the issue, or is it going to be, gold star action? And that's up to the people, the community in Bath and also the decision makers. So I hope it's that gold star that Bath is reaching for. And I heard that Bath was voted one of the best places in the UK to bring up a family, and that's a really amazing thing. But if they're going to have stunted lungs and problems breathing, that's not something that we want to be held accountable for. So I'm going to end it there, and I hope that was a useful kind of settling into the day and kind of thinking about the broader picture, the national picture, the local picture, and then what's most important, the Bath picture. So thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to chat with all of you and listen to the other presentations and hopefully have some nice chats over lunch and the rest of the day. So thank you very much.
That was excellent. A really very, very good scene setter. Sorry that I was pushing on because we've got 10 minutes for your voice to be heard. So please use the microphones. I think there's some brilliant headlines already. Let's Bath become the gold standard for action. Let's become the leaders in the UK to really find solutions to this. So thank you again. Come to the microphones, please. We want to hear from you now. We've got 10 minutes. Let's start already making your way. So you're in there, okay? Yep, off you go. Yeah.
Do you know how to turn the microphone? Hello. Philip Hale, Transition Bath. I just want to pick you up a little bit on your focus narrowly on air pollution. The UK has an obesity crisis which costs the NHS £10 billion a year, so 250 times more than air pollution. And one of the causes of obesity, 60% of people in Bath are overweight. One of those causes is that people use their cars all the time. The majority of my neighbours travel 200 metres to the nearest local shop to pick up small items in their cars. And we have a car culture. And even if we move to lower polluting electric cars, this problem with obesity doesn't go away. It's projected by 2025 that 75% of people in Bath will be overweight. So I think, when we discuss the issue of congestion and air pollution, we also ought to talk about the health benefits of switching away from our cars.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, excellent comment. And I think that's why I did that exercise at the beginning, to think about what is in your heart, the reason why you're here. And if you, sir, are driven by many different issues and one of them is obesity, then that is the narrative that needs to come out in public campaigning. Because because there isn't just one reason why we need to change the way that our cities and towns work. And I totally agree. I don't want to see every car replaced by an EV. We want to see people walking, cycling, you know, car sharing, also being empowered to kind of find other ways. They're also tackling things like loneliness and other issues. Like my brother has autism. He can't drive a car and he has problems with walking, but actually through kind of joining other disabled people in his community and hanging out with them more and doing things like activities together and not just relying on the car, it's not only helped his health, but it's also helped his well-being and his, you know, happiness. So I totally agree, and I think it's not just about one focus, but we have to think about all the different narratives we can bring out from all the different areas to touch people's hearts in different ways to get what we need in the end. So totally agree.
And I think what you just said is it's a behavior change, and we are talking more about that and how we get behavior change. But let's go to this microphone.
Where's the button?
Yeah.
The button? Hi. There's lots of statistics about pollution and things, but I think the only way to actually understand it is to experience it. I used to live in Cheltenham, which has a large problem with pollution, and when I went off deep into the countryside of Yorkshire, it became painfully obvious the difference. In Cheltenham, your eyes tend to water a lot. In Yorkshire, in just a day, it dried up. And then coming back in the car and the way down is exactly the opposite. As you came down south into Cheltenham, your eyes started to run again. That's the only way to understand it, I think. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Can we go? Can we also see whether we can get a few questions in here? I think the urgency of the problem we have all understood. It is really now to move on to finding and working together for some solutions. Yes, Peter.
Peter Turner. Close our eyes to think individually about what might happen. But my mind went back to the global, went back to the macro level of greed, corruption and power. Until we can actually do something about greed, corruption and power, maybe we should have a conference of dictators.
Peter, I mean, I know we have seen everything is connected, but it is too easy to always push the problem away from ourselves. I think it is about us taking responsibility and thinking about what we individually and as a collective in Bath can do, and once we show the way, hopefully others will follow.
And also just to add that when we see political change, in my view, usually the people making that change, and speaking to your, your comment about greed and other things, very often the people who are making these difficult decisions often go for the lowest common bar. And that's what I'm saying about the gold standard. The decision that is going to be made about air quality in Bath, this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'm really interested to hear how we can get to that gold star rather than, that kind of below bronze level. So I think that's something that would be a really interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think the government's kind of focused on NOx and not really on PM 2.5s and PM 10s? Because the PM 2.5s have some really quite carcinogenic materials. Oh, you're going to get used to this later. I'm talking really quick. Yeah. Hi. PM 2.5s and PM 10s don't seem to be within the focus of the government, and I think that there is an issue there that needs to be dealt with. Oh, the particles that you get from the brakes, tyre dust, road dust, the material from the asphalt, being brought up into the air, and then you breathe it in. And the nanoparticles around the metals that they produce, getting in dementia-causing, cancer-causing, all this type of stuff, but there doesn't seem to be a focus on. I know electric vehicles have regenerative brakes, so they have less of a problem around brake dust, but there's still a really big issue around tyre dust and things like that. But I'm just wondering if the government doesn't seem to be addressing that.
To be honest, I don't really know if the government know what they're doing at all on air pollution. They've had, as I said, so many court cases, they've had so many consultations, so many plans that have been rejected by the courts, by the EU, by local people. So they're not concentrating on anything, to be quite honest, because they're doing an appalling job in many ways. But again, I think this is a really important discussion, but that's not really why we're here. And we need to think about the national context for sure. And of course they're not doing enough, and I can talk to you in very detailed depth about all the consultations they're having if you want to know more. But I think it's, we're thinking about the government not doing enough, but then again, bringing it back to what can bands do.
I think the government is relatively clever, but also I think in some ways they're right. It needs local leadership. It is for us here in Bath, to actually lead the way. And the central government is facilitating councils to make more broad action happen. It's our decision. And that is a powerful thing, but it's also a big responsibility. Can we go to the next speaker?
Yeah, I'm John Bull. I'm the Labour councillor for Bolton on Bath and North East Somerset Council. My party's policy nationally is to introduce free transport for those under 25. And given that accessible transport is the answer, really, I think, to dependence on cars, wouldn't this be a great step forward, given that there is evidence that if young people don't learn to drive at 17, they delay the experience to much later in life, and this will make everybody less dependent on car transport.
Absolutely, but then a government, whatever government that is, needs to provide that public subsidy in order to make that happen. But yes, absolutely, if that's what we want to do and then implement, absolutely, that could be a solution. We have about another 5 minutes and then we really need to stop. And I see a lot of speakers lining up, so quick, please. Yeah.
Hi, Sarah Warren from Transition Bath. So Bath's the UK's only World Heritage City. The whole world looks to us, and we're small enough to be a walking city, a cycling city. The world looks to us, they take note of what we do. I just think there's no reason why we can't aspire to be, a world-leading sustainable transport city. And that is where we should be, aspiring.
Nick Coates, slightly to pop the bubble, and Sadiq Khan's announcement yesterday is to be welcomed. But what would you do if you were in his position with the thousands of less well-off people who have cars that are second, third, fourth hand?
Yeah, totally. This is a really big problem, and Greenpeace and lots of other organisations have really put our heads together to think about this, because what we don't want is for people below the poverty line or people who need extra support in life to be penalised for these decisions. Totally agree. Also, it's worth adding that Sadiq's plan is amazing. However, it doesn't actually include Euro 6 cars, which are the most recent cars, which are still polluting. So it's not quite perfect, but it is a really great step in the right direction. So we've been working with various groups to think about a package for these kind of issues. And for example, introducing a scrappage scheme would be one really key way to support people to scrap their cars, to get money in return, get subsidies for newer cars that are less polluting. But we are really thinking about that with other groups, and we've actually got a blog on the Greenpeace website with about 6 different suggested policies for people who are disabled, people who are elderly, and people below the poverty line on how they can be supported. So I can get that up and send it to you. But yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Absolutely, we do not want to penalise a particular section. But 2 more, and then we need to move on to our next session. Just very quickly, there are plenty more seats down here for the people who are sitting further away. If you want to make your way during the transition of the 2 speakers down here. But yes, let's hear it from you.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Tyndall. I'm a stonemason. I've made a very good living here out of pollution. This is a World Heritage Site. People come here to see our architecture. And the council paid huge amounts of money repairing buildings. The churches have paid out huge amounts of money doing that, the Abbey and the other churches. And of course, you yourselves have probably, some of you, paid out a lot of money on your buildings. That is, all right, it's not as bad as paying the NHS paying out for your health, but I can assure you pollution has cost you an awful lot of money.
Last but not least.
Hi, I'm Lynn Patterson, Green Councillor from Lambridge Ward in Northeast Bath, where we have the London Road. And we've also had a cut in our bus service, where our route has stranded people from being able to get to their local shopping area over a steep hill. We've been campaigning over this for now a long, long time, and what happens? We get fobbed off between the council and the West of England Combined Authority. The West of England Combined Authority, WECA, says, oh, you must talk to your council. The council says, oh, you must talk to WECA. And we get bounced back and forth, and nothing happens, and this has been going on too long.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, they should talk together, too. And this is why we're here, we're talking together. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I just want to say, just before I leave, like, if I can leave one thing in your brain, in your mind, it's that how can we get that gold star together? And what I've kind of heard so far on the day, there's obviously passion, there's obviously issues, but we're not going to get that gold star for Bath unless everyone does something to make that better. So I'd really like people to think about what you can do in your community, what you can do personally, what you can do in terms of the consultation, in terms of writing to councillors, public, raising public awareness, because that's going to make the change to get that gold. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And if you want to hear anything that we've done to try and raise the agenda nationally, then really happy to talk about that. But thank you so much. It's great to hear so much passion in the room, because that's the starting point that will lead to the action. So thank you very much.